So Chris, you've been looking at my website, Adopted to Uganda, and I was wondering, how much did you learn about globalization and stuff from my website, or if you understood it at all?
Well, I don't really know as much as I was kind of hoping to learn about it, so kind of wondering if you can explain that a little bit more.
Okay, so basically, we watched a video on it in my class, and we went over the different ranks, basically, of each country. Or not each country, but different countries have different ranks. And so there's like 1.0 countries and 2.0 countries and 3.0 countries. And the 1.0 countries would be like first world countries. Just kidding. Third world countries. That was bad. So it would be like third world countries, and they're like 1.0 because the government is in charge. So it's like first generation kind of a thing. And so that's basically what 1.0 countries are. And then 2.0 countries are kind of a little bit ahead of that. And they globalize, and that basically means that they interact with other countries through companies. So individually owned companies from people in the country. So people in, whatever country it is, they'll own the companies, and that's how they interact with the rest of the world. Now, 3.0 countries interact with the rest of the world individually. So like every single person, so this would be like the United States and other first world countries, and they just, it's just like instant messaging or the internet, or just what we're doing right now over the internet. We're, talking instantly and stuff, and it's like we are able to do that as individuals, and it's not like it's through the government or through individually owned companies or anything like that. And so that's basically what the globalization rank thing on my website was talking about. So do you have a
Okay,
better understanding about that?
so you're saying that the 1.0 countries are countries that kind of stick to themselves, and they like the government's the only interacting power between other countries.
Yeah.
And then so 2.0 is countries whose companies do all the whose companies and governments interact with the rest of the world. And then the third 3.0 is countries that, like, every individual has the opportunity to communicate with outside of the country.
Exactly.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm very glad that you understand that. And then, okay, so another thing that was on my website was the Millennium Development Goals. Do you have any questions about that?
Okay, so I'm not very clear as to what the Millennium Goals are. Okay, so I understand the goals, but one thing I was wondering is, like, what what is in place that will help you develop those goals, or achieve those goals is what I meant.
Like in Uganda?
Yeah.
Okay, so like for the first one, which is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, um, they don't really have any goals as far as like employment goes or anything like that, and like a really slow process. Like they're getting some help, or actually most of the help that they're getting is from like outside countries and stuff, like the US and things like that, and things like the Red Cross is in Uganda and stuff, and so it's like very temporary stuff that's mostly been going on throughout there. And then for education, again, it's mostly from outside countries and who are going in and helping with sorting through uh, trying to get children into school and educating them. And like they have some places, like specific places for children, but a lot of times it's like in, because most of the country is like rural area, and so they don't really get any help. So that's really a really slow process. And then the next one is promote gender equality and empower women. And when it comes to that, really they've been doing a good job at implementing, or not really implementing, but they've been bringing up new legislatures and laws and things that are supposed to help women. They're supposed to help them like with abusive husbands and like getting them more land and things like that, but really there's no enforcing of the rules, and so that's kind of something that is worrisome. So reducing the child mortality and also improving maternal health, because they're kind of similar. But basically for those, there have been like some hospitals and things that have been put in place that have been able to get better technology so that they can help these people, they can help the women who are pregnant, so that way they can actually have kids, and so that the kids aren't dying off all the time, because it had a pretty high mortality rate. So that is something that they're really trying to work on. It's still pretty slow, but it's kind of keeping up with what they expected or what they hoped would come about for that. And then when it comes to combating diseases, like earlier this year they had a huge breakout of this, like, I don't really know if it's a new disease, but I've never heard of it before, but it's called Ebola. And basically it's awful, and you get like these open like rashes and things all over you, and it's pretty bad. And so and it's spread through like blood and other liquids and body liquids, and so like people were super scared, and like there were 16 people who were dead, and that just happened like over this past summer. So they were doing a really good job at like hammering that down and stuff. And as far as like HIV and AIDS go, because that's always a problem in third world countries, but as far as that goes, they've been trying to educate the population more, so that way there'd be less spread of it. And then as far as ensuring environmental sustainability, they're trying to get more access to drinking water, and like trying to implement like wells and things that will help the people not have to travel so far in order to get clean water. And another thing, like the UN, they have these historical sites. That's what they're called. And there are 3 of them in Uganda. They have them like in all the countries, but there are 3 of them in Uganda. And one of them is the Rwenzori Mountains. And basically, like when it snows up there and everything, all the water flows down into the Nile River, and that is like a huge water source for a lot of the people in Uganda and in other countries where it runs. And so it's really important to keep like places like that clean and stuff and available to the people. And then developing a global partnership. I already mentioned like the Red Cross and things that are there. The YMCA is also there. And let's see, what else is there? They're trying to, they have like oil rigs and stuff in Uganda, and basically they've been trying to get help from Kenya and Tanzania, which are right next to Uganda, and those two countries are right next to the ocean, and that's basically how you get your products anywhere. Yeah, exactly. You know, importing and exporting is like through the water, and so um, uh, to get the oil from Uganda to Kenya, they're trying to build a pipeline that will send the oil over there, so it can be a lot easier for them to do that, and so they can get it exported a lot faster, and yeah, so it's kind of important for them to have a really good relationship with Kenya and Tanzania, which luckily so far they do have. So that is basically what they're working on as far as the Millennium Development Goals. Does that answer your question-ish? Mostly, kind of?
Yeah, it does. Had a question. But it's gone.
Okay, well, let me know if it comes up again. So, yeah. Okay, so we have this thing called the development dollar in my class, and basically we're supposed to use that to implement our ideas and innovations and things, and how we can use that to help our country, so mine being Uganda. And really what I wanted to do was, because I'm a child development major, so it kind of goes along with my field of work, which is nice, is that they have a lot of adoption programs in Uganda, and I've always kind of wanted to adopt children. Like, I always thought it would have been a really good idea to do, but I never really thought about adopting from another country. And so, like, realizing that I could do that, it was kind of like, oh, that could be a really good idea. It would obviously take more than $1, but definitely something that I could do. And so I know that there are definitely kids in Uganda who could use the help with that, because in Uganda they have kind of a higher birth rate, especially versus like the U.S. And they don't really have enough jobs and things for the people who are there, and so it'd be good to take them out of that, like take a child out of that situation and put them into a much better situation, which would be getting them to the U.S., which in my opinion that would be a better situation. And it would also help out me, and it would help out like the entire U.S. economy, because we aren't having enough children here to replace the number of people who are living here, or, well, we barely are. And so by bringing in kids from other countries, then we can up the available people who will be able to work in the workforce and things. And plus, like I said, I've always kind of wanted to adopt kids and stuff, so it's kind of also for me, it's like bringing it in at a local level, like understanding that bringing in different cultures together would definitely help out multiple cultures, like the ones that are all getting together and stuff, and they can work together to make something awesome, like a family. So that was my idea on that. So do you understand like how that works, the development dollar and like things like that? And does that make sense?
I understand that you're supposed to use the dollar to benefit the country. So as far as that goes, and I understand your way of doing that. But one thing that you mentioned earlier that kind of is interesting. You said that there was a high mortality rate of children births.
Yeah.
So, but you also said that there's a lot of children in the, like, without a home?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, what would happen if they increase or decrease the mortality rate of the children? Wouldn't that cause more children without a home?
Um, that's a good point. I don't really think about that. But possibly, yes. Um, but, I mean, there are places for those kids to go a lot of the time, if they can find the place. And, but it's not even that, the Millennium Development Goal isn't just working on, like, when children are first born, trying to get them to live, but, like, continuing their lifespan. So, really, it's only from, like, birth to 5 years old or something like that. But if they can implement that for those ages, then they'd be able to implement it, I would think, more for the older ages as well. So, it'd be a better chance for them to just continue to survive. And so, and hopefully they'd actually have jobs for them, but anyway.
Okay, yeah, that reminded me of the question I had earlier. You mentioned with a number of these goals that, like, they weren't being carried out very well, and I was just wondering, what is it that's causing those goals to not be carried out very well?
Oh, probably the government, because their government sucks. In my opinion, it's like they don't really care so much about their people, like, as much as they should. And, like, they could probably be doing a lot more to help the people. They're just, either they're lazy or they don't know what to do themselves, and so then they're just like, okay, well, I don't know what to do, so now what? And so that's kind of what I think is going on, is that they just, like, the government doesn't know what to do, and no one really knows how to help themselves. And so that's kind of where I think the problem is. I could be totally wrong, but that's my idea on it.
Do you see the government as a hindrance to the help, the outside help that's coming into the country?
I don't think so. I'm not really sure about that.
Because one thought I had while reading through all your information on your website was that maybe a lot of these things are not happening, like, because of, like what you said, the government. And I'm wondering if the government's actually causing a lot of the progress that is being made over there to actually slow down, or in some cases even reverse. And so I'm wondering, how are you supposed to help a country that doesn't want to help its own people?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, like, they do allow, like, help to come in, like, obviously, because, like, the Red Cross is there, and there's even a teacher who is from Butte, Idaho, who is over there now, who's implementing, like, he's helping out, like, orphans and stuff in the area. And so, like, they're allowing help to come in. I just don't know, but I don't know how permanent that help is going to be. And, yeah, so what was the question? I'm not sure if I answered that or if I just made things more confusing.
No, I think you answered it the best way you could. I was asking it, if the government is the reason why that there's not being more progress being made in Uganda.
Okay, yeah. And plus, the government did take on the goals in the first place, so...
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, well, while we're on the topic of government and everything, on the side of the United States, like, thinking about our government here and what we could do to help and what our government could do to help. So I would think that like our president should really take on more responsibility for like the debt that is in our country. And I honestly don't think that either of the candidates, when they were running, I don't really think that they mentioned really the debt at all. And that's like, to me, that's like the biggest problem in our country, is trying to get rid of this debt that we have. And so I think that if we could just focus on getting rid of the debt, and that way we could actually use more things in order to help other countries instead of just putting ourselves deeper into a hole, that would be a lot better. But I don't know. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I believe the same thing. I believe that until we get our debt taken care of, we really can't help anyone else out financially, because we don't really have any money, really, because we're in debt trillions of dollars.
Yeah. And like talking even about that is like even how like the states and how like even a lot of like the counties and cities and stuff are all in debt. Like if we could just, piece by piece get out of debt, and like even a lot of the people in the United States are in debt. And that's like a huge problem. And so like if we can just like get our people out of debt and start getting like our communities and things all out of debt, and get the government out of debt, then we could actually start being better at globalization and helping other countries and things get to where they need to be, in my opinion.
Yep. Yep, I agree.
Okay, so do you have any other questions or things that were unanswered about, like my website or what I've already said or anything like that?
I did have a question. I was wondering, what is the main income for Uganda? Like, what is their main trade? I know you mentioned, somewhere on your website there was something that was talking about the cocoa beans, and it sounded like that was a pretty big source of income for Uganda, but I wasn't sure if that was like their main income, or if it was just a, something that did bring in income, or what.
Okay, so their main income, what they usually export is, first is coffee, and then the second is tea, and the third is cotton, and the fourth is tobacco. So, if you're LDS and wanting to help out Uganda, you'd probably only be able to get it from buying their cotton.
Sounds like it. Okay. So what are they doing to further increase their income in those situations? Do you know?
I don't really know. Probably just like praying for good weather.
Okay. So that must tie in with what you were talking about earlier about trying to keep the environment protected, so that those things that do bring in their income don't get destroyed. I think that's what you mentioned on your website. You didn't mention in this video.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. Exactly. So just keeping what they already have still available, so that way their environment will be able to keep up with itself and keep providing for them, and hopefully providing for them better than it has been. Then that would be great.
I think another thing you mentioned on your website was something about bringing companies into the country. Was that something you were talking about?
I think so. What I was talking about there was if you can bring other companies into Uganda, then that would provide for them more jobs, and it would probably be pretty cheap labor for the companies, and it would provide jobs for people. And so it would just be really good pretty much all around, except for maybe for the country that the company's coming from, because you know how the US is always going to other countries.
Outsourcing.
But yeah, so that's what I was talking about there.
Okay. So what are some things that would draw those companies into Uganda?
The cheap labor, and
are there any resources that they have that are being harvested or not being harvested enough that would appeal to companies?
Sure, there's always things that could be of interest to companies. I mean, obviously there's oil there, but there's, you know, coffee, tea, cotton, and tobacco. Like, if they're interested in that kind of stuff, and, you know, like, other crops and things, and they have, like, dairy farms and things that are there, and they do textiles, and, yeah, so, like, just things like that. Yeah. They got, like, building materials and wood and metal products, and yeah, so they have things there definitely that would be appealing to companies or people who are wanting to put their companies there. So
Okay.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for viewing my website and being of great help to me on this. So